This is your daily dose of all things royal. These people are so corrupt. My God, where is the money? Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Archewell Fugazi Public Charity has just released their IRS 2023 tax filing, and let me tell you, there's a lot that's missing and a lot that just doesn't make any kind of sense. With all this word salad that they throw into their 2024 impact report, they kind of want you to be distracted and confused. But we're going to get to the bottom of this and rip this to shreds. Let's go. So to start off, for 2023, they are reporting that they have gross receipts of $5,729,733. This is what they're claiming the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity did in revenue, bringing in money. Of that $5,729,733, $5,336,780 of that came in from contributions, whether it be donations as well as grants. Now, the rest of that revenue came from investment income. Now, I can't tell you if that's the interest that accrued sitting on the $8 million plus that they have stashed away. But in any case, this is what makes up the total amount that Archewell Fugazi Public Charity did in the year of 2023. Now, when we move into the expenses, what did they actually use? Well, the total right now that we're seeing in front of us is $3,299,948. So now when you really try to deconstruct and break this down, you realize that not much money is going into helping others, which we kind of knew that, but when you look at the numbers, it just solidifies it. So take, for example, look at the interest that they received on the investment income. Pull that out for a second. You're working with $5,300,000 and something thousand. When $1 million of that is going towards paying 4 people's salaries, we're talking about Shauna Knepp, James Holt, some new person, Disa Tank for communications and PR, and then you have 2 contractors, Jory Craig and Beth Hurley, being added to the mix. You're shelling out a lot of money for keeping these people on payroll. Then on top of that, you have $1 million added into other expenses, which Archewell is very cloudy in this report as to what those other expenses might be. You really look at only $1,300,000 that's going towards helping actual people. You'll see what I mean when we dig into this. So now when we move into looking at the actual accomplishments or statement of program service accomplishments, looking at the comparison between 2022 and 2023, you can see not much has changed in the word salad that they have given that really doesn't tell us anything aside from more money was dedicated for censorship initiatives versus the other BS that they pretend to care about. What's funny is when you listen to the programs that they have here, it's just all light, flowery marketing terms that they have been using to mask the evil and sinister initiative that they have been on since 2020. As you can see here, Archewell's uplifting communities. The Archewell Fugazi Public Charity uplifts communities across the globe by investing time and resources into people and places that foster meaningful bonds and help people thrive. How do they thrive? Like, what does your presence by showing up and taking photos for PR pieces doing to help the actual communities that you're going into and bothering? Then you have 4B and 4C, which are essentially the same thing. When you look at this, it's almost as if they're double dipping and being redundant here, where it says, building a better online world. At the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity, we are putting people first and making investments in innovative upstream solutions aimed at creating a technology ecosystem designed for good, one that is safe, healthy, inclusive, and innovative. And then they have, to piggyback off of that, restoring trust and information. The Archewell Fugazi Public Charity promotes information integrity and ethical journalism as a fundamental right, an essential need for the well-being of communities and democracies the world over. As we seek the creation of a better, more trustworthy, and diverse information environment across all forms of media, we support research and organizations creating a more informed, fact-based, and more connected world. So both 4B and 4C are directly related. So when you're looking at these numbers, you almost wonder if they're double dipping in each of these programs. They're not really indicating what the actual outcomes or impact they have been making. It's just a lot of bullshit, flowery terms that they threw in here. Like, where are the metrics to show the impact? A lot of this, we're going to help communities thrive by getting community together in the collective, really doesn't tell you anything on how this benefited people. And this is the annoying thing about Harry and Meghan. They throw in all this bullshit language that really has no effect on anyone aside for themselves because they're pocketing money. Moving on into the compensation of the key employees, James Holt still holding strong as the company president, as well as Shauna Knepp in 2023, she received a lovely raise of 292% higher than what she was making in 2022 at $92,994 to in 2023, she's making now $272,241, more than James Holt, who is the president. Now, this is my opinion, but I believe the only reason why Shauna Knepp received this 300% increase in wages is because of the backlash Harry and Meghan faced last year when Shauna Knepp was making a lot less than her male peer, James Holt, even though holding practically the same title, in addition to wearing other responsibilities such as secretary and treasury. So in order to save face, of course, they're going to put Shauna Knepp on top to show that Meghan is a champion for equity and equal rights for women, closing that wage gap. All of this is for PR purposes, but you could bet if nobody said anything, Shauna Knepp's salary would have been the same. Maybe she would have gotten a $1,000 increase. Who knows? But I can guarantee you that it wouldn't have been as high as 300% or almost 300%. Replacing Sunshine Sax's Michael Dale Stein is this woman, Disa Tank, who is assuming the position of communications manager, whatever that means. So now here's where the numbers start to go sideways for me. So they total up with their key employees, which amounts to $640,741. And that is for 3 people. We have Disha Tank, James Holt, and Shauna Knepp. Then there's other salaries, which are these contractors paying Beth Hurley a nice little $155,000 for her services. And then you have Jory Craig, who is getting like $140,000 change. You know, it's quite telling that they got rid of Genevieve Roth from Invisible Hands. Now, if you don't know who she is, she was heavily aligned with Meghan and Harry in the very beginning and had been connected to Obama and the Clintons in the work that she has done. Now, if you'll recall, Genevieve Roth had been one of these social justice warriors who appeared to be one of these apologists for being white, and everything had been centered around racial injustice. Anyway, when we take a look at what Archewell Fugazi Public Charity gave to help organizations here domestically in the United States, we're looking at $1 million that went out of that $5.3 million that they raked in. In addition, individual grants that were given out only amounts to $52,500. Then when we look at the foreign assistance at $172,537 and compare that to the amounts broken out, the numbers don't make any kind of sense. Anyway, as I stated earlier, the compensation for the officers, directors, and employees is supposed to amount to $640,741, but here they have $545,526. Why is there a discrepancy here? Same goes with the other salaries and wages at $359,936 when it should be only $301,550. So it feels like they're baking in some numbers here. That's just the impression I'm getting. Now, I'm not a tax expert. I'm just reading this how I see it. If you know, please leave your comment below to inform the rest of us because, I don't necessarily know how these numbers are adding up to what we're seeing on these pages. Next, we go into this line item at $554,088 under the category of Other. And when you go to Schedule O to see what the list line is of this amount broken out, this is what they tell us. So now here's where the IRS needs to do a full audit. You have $500,000 that has no explanation as to what it went towards, aside from it being program service expenses. What they essentially did here, even though they were asked to list out these expenses in Schedule O, they just repeated what was on the statement of functional expenses broken out. As you can see, it's not what they asked for, and all Archewell Fugazi Public Charity did was be redundant here, almost as if they were trying to be slick and thinking that, oh, the IRS is not going to look that deep into the numbers here, considering that this is practically in one of the last pages of this filing. They're probably thinking, nobody's going to look too close at it. Well, we are looking close at it, and we want to know, what did that $500,000 go towards? Was it the private jets? Was it putting it in your bank account? Was it spending it on all this PR bullshit? Inquiring minds would like to know, Archewell, considering you are a public charity. I'd like to remind everyone that a public charity is very different to a foundation, in which a public charity must be transparent in how they use public funds, because for the most part, donations coming in from the public or coming in from the government needs to be shown how it's being spent. So now if Megan is pocketing that or using it for her lifestyle, I think the public would need to know about that, especially if they're getting these tax breaks. Moving into the actual donations, looking at the donations for 2023, again, it's only a handful of donations, with the bulk of it coming in from one donation of $5 million. Now, you may recall, I was the one that exposed finding $6 million that had not been accounted for in the Archewell Fugazi Public Charities 2022 tax returns. As you can see here in Fidelity's reporting for 2022, they have listed that they gave Archewell Fugazi Public Charity $6 million. Now, many of you came back and said perhaps maybe the $6 million will show up in the 2023 Archewell filing because of the calendar years being off and different. So Archewell is from January to December, while Fidelity's is from June to the following July of the next year. And that was a fair argument. So now looking at both 2023 and 2022, where is the $6 million figure? You have one for $5 million, and then you have one for $1 million in 2022, but that wouldn't make sense, because if Fidelity dropped $6 million to Archewell, it either fell in 2023 or 2022. So where is that money? There's no doubt in my mind that money is not being reported. Harry and Meghan are receiving government funds, and it's trickling down in a way that you can't tell that Archewell is tied to receiving taxpayer money. And I'm going to show you how this all works. Now, I have picked up on the fact that Harry and Meghan invest in areas where the U.S. government is spending our tax dollars. So if when you look at the grants that they're making from year to year, you'll notice they're not consistent with the groups that they are giving money to. They are changing constantly. And this year is no different. When you look at the spend for 2023, you notice that Harry and Meghan have been making significant investments or small little grants being given to these resettlement projects like Welcome Project or Welcome.us. And I did say that this is where the Biden administration has been spending a lot of money. So it would make total sense as to why we're seeing now this bandwagon that Harry and Meghan have jumped on in order to profit off the backs of exploiting the taxpayer as well as these refugees coming into the country and not doing a goddamn thing, but posing pictures with the same people. You see, this is all part of the grift. And the way that the taxpayer money ends up in their hands goes from a brokerage firm like a Fidelity. So, for instance, if the Department of State contracts with HIAS, which is an organization that holds one of the biggest contracts for this migrant resettlement, or for the UN, for the matter of the fact, what they do is they put billions of dollars into an investment firm like this that has this kind of charitable trust, and then they end up taking that money and doling it out to other charities like Archewell Fugazi Public Charity to go off and show up and do good. So this is how taxpayer money ends up trickling down into the hands of people like Harry and Meghan to then pocket and then throw a couple bones out to pretend that they're actually doing something to help people. Now, I pointed this out, and I'll point it out again, that in 2022, the Biden administration had announced that they are accelerating this resettlement of these refugees coming in from Afghanistan and everywhere else and their mother. So the Department of State had announced that they will be funding a consortium of nonprofit organizations that have expertise in welcoming, resettling, and integrating refugees into the U.S. It's kind of what Meghan has latched onto, thinking that their mental health and their collective well-being is so important to her. But no, this is what she's after. It's this money. And one of the organizations that Archewell had partnered with, allegedly, was HIAS. Now, HIAS has got one of the biggest contracts from the Department of State and the Department of Homeland Security in putting together and giving money out to these various organizations to go ahead and do what they need to do in order to get these people resettled. They don't really follow up on how the money is being used. They're just taking our money and spreading it out to these various nonprofits or NGOs, which is what Archewell Fugazi Public Charity has been doing. So as you can see here, this was one of the programs that had been, announced back in 2022 to where billions of dollars have been shelled out to organizations just like Archewell Fugazi Public Charity to do what they please with this money. And what Meghan and Harry have been doing is sort of creating the smoke and mirrors that they're doing all this wonderful stuff for these people, but meanwhile giving out these little $25,000 grants here and there to make it look like that they're using the money for a good cause and pocketing the rest of it. I would be interested in knowing how much money have they received from these various organizations to go ahead and carry out and be the last leg of destroying the fabric of this country, similar to what we're seeing happen in the UK with the refugees coming in and not being assimilated into the British culture. So it's no surprise that last year in the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity's impact report, they made it sound like this welcome project was all of Meghan's idea because she went to talk to a couple Afghan women and because she had this experience with the Hub Community Kitchen, then all of a sudden now this is something that we need to put together and launch. No, that's not what happened. The Welcome Project has been ongoing for a while, but because there has been an injection of cash from the U.S. government is the only reason why Meghan's so gung-ho and interested with it. Last year, in November of 2023, when I saw the White House announce this, that $500 million was going to be now dedicated to women's health research, I said, Meghan is going to find a way to get her grubby little sticky hands on that money. And sure enough, what do we see? The biggest grant that Archewell Fugazi Public Charity gave in 2023 of $250,000 went to an organization called the Women's Wellness Space. Now, leave it to Meghan to firmly attach herself to the Bidens by becoming a founding partner of this Women's Wellness Space with Ashley Biden. I wonder how much of that $500 million is going to be laundered now through this Women's Wellness Space and into Meghan's pockets. Now, the biggest nut that I think of funding was for the censorship initiatives that most likely came from the Department of State or Department of Homeland Security and then finally trickled down into the hands of Meghan and Harry via whether it be USAID, as we saw with Colombia, Nigeria, various projects that they have in the works align with now putting pressure externally on international countries to drive the censorship initiative that they want to see done here domestically. And this is why we've seen Harry and Meghan so focused on talking with students pertaining to the online space and trying to get policy being pushed pertaining to keeping the kids safe. If you notice, both Nigeria and Colombia both had similar discussions with Meghan on how we need to put guardrails in place to keep our children safe. So what do we think is in store for Harry and Meghan's Archewell Fugazi Public Charity in 2025? Well, I think it could go multiple routes. One route would be obviously Harry and Meghan distancing themselves away from this organization because everything that they touch gets scrutinized. Perhaps maybe they might allow someone else to take it over and run it, and they have no involvement. The other route that I think could happen is that now we have a new administration coming in. Archewell is going to take a look at where the money is going to be spent. And I do believe if money is going to be injected into finding these migrant children, you can bet Harry and Meghan are going to be all over that. Also to help find those children, as well as all the other assholes that did nothing now because there was no money in it, will all of a sudden now care about these children that have been trafficked and have gone missing. Other places where they most likely have turned for funding might be the UN or the Clinton Global Initiative, as well as NATO. You see, just because they didn't get it from the US government doesn't mean that they're not getting it from other sources, or even maybe corrupted oligarchs, which I have no doubt in my mind Harry and Meghan have been mixed up with those very same people in order to do the dirty dealings that they've been doing the last 4 years. That's just my opinion and assumption based off of the behavior that we have been observing the past 4 years and the people that they have been aligned with. I have no doubt in my mind that Harry and Meghan have been hiding money. And you don't put out there into the media that you're going to go ahead and buy a place in Portugal for $4 million when everybody's thinking that you are dead ass broke. You know what I mean? If we start seeing Harry and Meghan going into investing in real estate, which is the word on the street, then you know something is going on. Then you know there's other sources of income that's not being reported on purpose. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up here is something that I find a bit odd when it comes to looking at the amount of money given in grants and the size of these grants, that 2 of these grants in the larger size denominations went to providing mental health to support aid workers in Turkey, Syria, Israel, and Gaza. Now, I'm thinking to myself, why would you be giving money to help the aid workers for mental health as opposed to not giving that money to the people who are affected in that conflict area, such as those losing their whole entire families and have no place to go, or have been affected by some type of explosion and are dealing with an injury? $130,000 given to AIDS for mental health support versus giving $5,500 in a grant to U.S. vets for the homeless? Something just doesn't seem right here, folks. Look, if Meghan and Harry weren't so corrupt, the thought of money laundering wouldn't even enter my mind. But the fact that they have lied so much, why not? Why not be involved in that, right? And I think it's worth exploring, and I think it's worth the IRS investigating them because these numbers do not make sense. But what do you guys think? Do you think that I'm overreacting and being too harsh, or do you see that there's money missing and the numbers are not adding up? But definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I will talk to you later. Bye!
I was such a fraud.